Welcome to Awakened Calm. There are moments late at night when silence does not feel silent at all. The room may be still, the world outside quiet, yet within your own head the volume only seems to rise. Thoughts circle like restless birds, each swooping in before the last one has flown away. A conversation from earlier in the day replays itself. A deadline creeps back into awareness, and the mind asks questions that never seem to matter until the lights are off and rest should be near. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at a busy train station. Trains are rushing past on every track, each carrying different passengers, each heading in a different direction. Your thoughts behave in a similar way, arriving and departing without asking permission. Some carry memories, others are heavy with worry, and a few are bright and exciting, tempting you to follow them. Most of us believe we have to board every train, that each thought must be pursued and solved before peace is possible. But what if you could simply remain on the platform and watch them pass? Here is the question that holds the key to this exploration tonight. If you are not the trains, then who is the one standing on the platform watching them? If you are not the noise inside your head, then who is listening to it? This idea may feel unusual at first. After all, we are taught from childhood to claim our thoughts as our own, to define ourselves by what we believe, what we plan, what we remember. Modern culture reinforces it constantly. Social media, news, endless notifications. They all strengthen the illusion that our identity is nothing more than the thoughts running across the mind. And yet, if you stop and look closely, there is another presence, something steady, something unchanging, quietly aware of every passing word and image. The traditions of Zen Buddhism invite us to discover this present not as a mystical secret hidden far away, but as something we already know. It is the same awareness that noticed the first thought you ever remember having as a child, and the same awareness noticing the thoughts you have right now. It does not come and go. It does not demand attention. It simply observes. The hook is both simple and profound. You are not your thoughts. This recognition changes the way we rest, the way we connect with others, and the way we face life's challenges. For if you are not trapped inside the chatter of your mind, then you are free to watch it, to let it rise and fall like waves, without being pulled under. So tonight, as you settle into stillness, let this question remain with you. Who is the one watching the trains of thought? Who is hearing the chatter, but not becoming it? The answer may surprise you, and in that surprise, you may find the beginning of peace. When you begin to notice the chatter of your own thoughts, something subtle, yet profound is already happening. It may feel like a small shift, almost invisible, but it is a turning point. For most of our lives, we are so immersed in the stream of thinking that we do not realize there is water flowing around us at all. We are inside the current, being carried along by it, convinced that we are the current itself. But the moment you recognize the noise, the endless inner narration, is also the moment you recognize that there must be someone, something, silently watching it. This silent presence is what many traditions call the observer. At first, the observer may feel fragile, like a candle flame flickering in a storm. You notice it for a second, then the wind of thought pulls you back into identification with the chatter. One moment you are aware that a voice is speaking inside your mind, and the next moment you are arguing with it, defending yourself against it, or following its endless storylines. And yet, the very fact that you noticed, even for a moment, proves that there is a place within you that is not the storm itself. That place is the beginning of freedom. Think of sitting in a theater, the lights dimmed, the film rolling across the screen. As the story unfolds, you laugh, you cry, you feel suspense, and sometimes you even forget you are sitting in a chair. For 2 hours, you become the hero, the villain, the lover, the victim. But then the credits roll, the lights come on, and you remember, none of it was real. You were watching shadows on a screen. The observer within you is like that. It sits quietly in the theater of your mind, watching the drama of thoughts, feelings, and memories play out. Sometimes you get lost in the story, but you can always return to the seat. to the awareness that you are watching. Modern life makes this discovery both more difficult and more urgent. Our world is designed to keep us entangled in thought, notifications, emails, advertisements, conversations, worries about tomorrow, regrets about yesterday. Each one adds fuel to the constant fire of mental activity. It is easy to believe that you are the sum of all these sparks, that without them you would disappear. But try for a moment to step back and listen. There is a difference between the noise and the one hearing the noise. That difference is the space of the observer. The observer is not judgmental. It does not criticize your thoughts or argue with them. It does not push them away or pull them closer. It simply notices. Imagine standing by the side of a highway. Cars rush past, each one fast, loud, and urgent. If you step into the traffic, you will be overwhelmed. But if you stand on the shoulder and simply watch, the cars pass by without touching you. The observer is like that safe place on the shoulder of the road. Thoughts race through, but they cannot harm you when you remain in the space of noticing. This presence has been described in many ways throughout history. Some call it awareness, others call it consciousness, and some spiritual traditions speak of it as the witness. Zen teachers often use metaphors to point toward it. Because words cannot fully capture what it is, they may say that awareness is like the sky, vast and open, while thoughts are like clouds moving through it. The clouds can be dark or light, stormy or gentle, but they never damage the sky itself. The sky holds them all without resistance, without preference. When you touch the observer within, you begin to realize that you are the sky, not the clouds. At first, this realization may feel abstract. You may think, yes, I understand the metaphor, but I still feel like I am my thoughts. That is natural. The conditioning of identifying with thought is deep and lifelong. From the moment we learn language, we begin to weave a story of I around our experiences. We say I am angry instead of anger is arising. We say I am sad instead of sadness is passing through. The words themselves reinforce the illusion that the thought and the self are one. But when you begin to practice observing, even in small ways, cracks appear in that illusion. Try a simple experiment. Close your eyes for a few moments and watch what arises in your mind. Do not try to control it. Perhaps an image of someone you spoke with today appears. Perhaps you hear a sentence about something you need to do tomorrow. Perhaps a memory from years ago floats in. Notice how these appear without your invitation. You did not call for them, yet here they are. And notice also that you can see them. They are not you, because you are the one seeing them. This is the emergence of the observer. The observer does not live in the future or the past. It lives only here, in this very moment. When you slip into worrying about what might happen tomorrow, you are lost in thought. When you replay what someone said yesterday, you are lost in memory. But the observer watches even this. It notices that you are lost and gently waits for you to return. No matter how far you wander, the observer is always here, patient and unmoving, like the mountain that remains, even when clouds cover its peak. In many ways, the observer is closer to you than anything else. Yet it often feels distant because we are so rarely taught to look for it. Our culture prizes doing over being, thinking over noticing. We are rewarded for quick answers, strong opinions, decisive judgments, but awareness itself asks nothing of you. It does not demand achievement. It simply invites you to rest in its presence. This resting is not laziness or passivity. It is the foundation of clarity. When you see thoughts as they arise, you are less likely to be swept away by them. You can choose your actions instead of being driven by unconscious patterns. Think of a heated argument. Words are flying, emotions are high, and inside your mind 1,000 thoughts are screaming. Defend yourself, attack, retreat, shout louder. If you are identified with those thoughts, you will act them out, often regretting it later. But if the observer is present, you can notice. There is anger rising, there is fear, there is a desire to hurt. In that noticing, a space opens. You may still feel the heat, but you are no longer consumed by it. From that space, You can choose a response that serves the moment rather than one that deepens the conflict. Another example is creativity. Many artists, writers, and innovators describe moments when their best ideas arrive, not when they are forcing themselves to think harder, but when they are relaxed, when they step back and simply notice. The observer creates space for inspiration to emerge. When the mind is not tangled in its own stories, new possibilities can arise naturally. The silence of the observer is fertile ground. It is important to understand that the observer is not something you need to create. It is already here. You are not building a new skill from scratch. You are simply recognizing what has always been present. Just as you cannot force the sky to appear behind the clouds, it is already there. You cannot force awareness to appear. You can only notice it. The practice is less about doing and more about remembering. As you begin to cultivate this recognition, small changes ripple through your life. You may notice that stressful situations feel slightly less overwhelming. You may catch yourself before spiraling into negative thinking. You may find more patience with yourself and others. These are signs that the observer is emerging more strongly in your awareness. Over time, this presence becomes a steady companion, always available, always watching. Some people worry that if they step back into the observer, they will become detached or cold, as if watching life from a distance. The opposite is true. When you identify less with the stories in your mind, you become more present with reality. You listen more deeply, see more clearly, and feel more authentically. The observer does not separate you from life. It connects you more intimately to it. By resting as the one who notices, you are no longer trapped behind the walls of thought. You are open to the flow of life itself. The emergence of the observer is not a dramatic event. There are no fireworks, no sudden enlightenment that erases all problems. Instead, it is quiet, gentle, almost ordinary. Yet in that ordinariness lies extraordinary power. To see that you are not the voice in your head, but the awareness hearing it, is to unlock a freedom that cannot be taken away. No matter what thoughts arise, fear, doubt, joy, or sorrow, you remain the one who notices. And in that noticing, you are free. As this recognition deepens, the relationship with thought itself begins to change. Thoughts no longer feel like absolute truths. They are seen more as suggestions, possibilities, movements of energy. Some are useful, some are not, but none define who you are. You can choose to follow a thought or to let it pass. The observer does not need to cling. Like someone watching clouds drift across the sky, you can enjoy their shapes without believing they are permanent. This shift does not happen overnight. It is a practice, a way of living. Some days the observer feels clear and strong. Other days, you are swept back into the current of thought. That is natural. The key is not to judge, not to fight, but to notice. Every moment of noticing is a return to awareness. Every recognition strengthens the presence of the observer. So tonight, as you settle into your rest, consider this. The thoughts will continue to arise, just as they always have been. They may be busy, loud, demanding, but you do not need to become them. You can simply watch. You can let the trains pass, the cars rush by, the clouds drift overhead, and as you watch, you may feel something new, or perhaps something very old emerging, a presence that has always been here, quietly waiting for you to remember. That presence is the observer, and it is you, more truly than any thought could ever be. The illusion of I am the thinker. As the presence of the observer begins to surface, another realization quietly follows. Much of what we take for granted about who we are is built upon a fragile assumption. This assumption is simple, repeated silently every day, and rarely questioned. It is the belief that I am the one thinking my thoughts. For centuries, human beings have lived inside this belief, as though it were an unshakable truth. Yet when we look closer, when we pause and turn our attention inward, cracks appear in this certainty. What if the voice in your head is not who you are? And what if the feeling that you are the author of each thought is no more than a convincing illusion? From the time we are children, the language we learn begins to weave this illusion. We say things like, I think, I believe, I remember. In school, we are praised for original ideas, for the ability to analyze and argue, for the cleverness of our minds. Society teaches us that our thoughts are possessions, like shoes or books, and that they belong to us alone. If a thought appears, we claim it immediately. It becomes my thought, my belief, my opinion. Over time, this constant claiming hardens into identity. We are no longer just people experiencing thoughts. We become the thinker, the one responsible for generating them all. But pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, have you ever truly chosen the next thought that entered your mind? Have you ever sat in silence and declared with certainty what would arise next? Most of the time, thoughts appear suddenly, without warning, like raindrops falling from a cloud. A memory of childhood may surface while you are washing the dishes. An image of a place you have never visited may flash in while you are driving. A phrase from a song you have not heard in years may replay itself in the background of your mind. Did you order these thoughts, like dishes from a menu, or did they simply arrive, uninvited yet insistent? This is where the illusion of being the thinker begins to unravel. If thoughts arise spontaneously, without your command, then who exactly is producing them? The mind insists that there must be a thinker, that somewhere inside is a little self pulling levers and pressing buttons, generating each word and image. But when you look for this thinker, where is it? You can find thoughts, you can find feelings, you can find sensations in the body. But can you ever locate the one doing the thinking? The closer you look, the more the supposed thinker vanishes like mist in the morning sun. Zen teachers have long pointed out this paradox. You can search for the self that claims ownership of thought, but you will find nothing solid. The belief in being the thinker is sustained not by evidence but by habit. It is a story told so often that it feels like fact. But a story, no matter how compelling, remains a story. Consider an actor on a stage. They take on the role of a king, a soldier, or a beggar. While the play unfolds, the audience may laugh or weep, swept into the illusion. Yet behind the costume and the script, the actor remains who they are. In the same way, when we identify as the thinker, we are playing a role. We are dressed in the costume of ideas, lines written by memory, culture, and conditioning. But when the play ends, when the curtain falls, the role dissolves. The actor is free. The illusion of being the thinker is simply the longest running play we have ever performed. Modern science also offers clues that this belief may be misplaced. Studies in neuroscience show that decisions and impulses often appear in the brain before we consciously register them. In other words, the thought has already arrived before the supposed thinker becomes aware of it. The conscious self then claims ownership, saying I decided that, when in fact it was presented to them a split second earlier. This evidence echoes what sages and meditators have discovered through direct experience for centuries. The sense of authorship is an afterthought, a story applied to events that have already occurred. Why then does the illusion feel so convincing? The answer lies in identification. The mind does not merely produce thoughts, it attaches a sense of ownership to them. When anger arises, the mind says I am angry. When sadness appears, the mind says I am sad. This identification fuses the thought with the self, creating a closed loop. The thought appears, the identity claims it, and the story of the thinker is reinforced. Over time, this loop becomes invisible, like the air we breathe. We no longer question it, we simply live inside it. Yet the cost of this illusion is immense. When we believe we are the thinker, every thought carries tremendous weight. A fleeting negative idea becomes a judgment against our character. A passing dark image becomes a sign of who we truly are. We begin to police our own minds, afraid of what might surface, ashamed of what already has. In reality, these thoughts are no more than passing weather, temporary ripples in the larger field of consciousness. But identified as the thinker, we take them personally, as though they were carved into our essence. This is why so many people live with guilt, anxiety, and self-criticism. They mistake the passing storm for their permanent identity. Imagine again the sky and the clouds. The clouds move and shift, forming shapes, breaking apart, vanishing. If the sky believed it was the clouds, it would suffer endlessly, changing with each new formation. One moment it would be proud of its bright white clouds, the next ashamed of its dark, heavy ones. But the sky is never touched by the clouds. It is vast, open, untouched. When we remember that we are awareness, not the thinker, we return to being the sky. We allow the clouds to pass without believing they define us. There is another danger in clinging to the illusion of being the thinker. We become trapped in endless loops of self-justification. Because we believe our thoughts are ours, we defend them fiercely. We argue with others not merely to exchange ideas, but to protect what we feel is part of our very being. This is why debates escalate, why politics divide us communities, why personal arguments cut so deep. If I am my thoughts, then when you challenge my opinion, you are challenging me. My existence feels threatened, so I fight back. But if thoughts are seen as appearances, as movements within awareness, then disagreement no longer endangers who I am. We can discuss, we can explore, we can even laugh, because my identity is not at stake. This does not mean thoughts are useless or meaningless. They can be brilliant tools, sources of creativity and problem solving, but the illusion of being the thinker is like confusing the tool with the hand that uses it. A carpenter uses a hammer, but does not believe they are the hammer. In the same way, awareness can use thought, but it is never defined by it. Recognizing this distinction is the key to liberation. So how do we begin to loosen the grip of this illusion? The first step is inquiry. Ask yourself gently, who is thinking this thought? Look closely, not for an intellectual answer, but for direct experience. When a thought arises, try to trace it back. Did you choose it? Did you see it coming? Or did it appear suddenly, without effort? Notice how quickly the sense of ownership jumps in, claiming it as mine. That leap is the habit of identification, the automatic reflex that sustains the illusion. The second step is practice. Each time you notice a thought, pause and remind yourself, this is a thought, not me. You can even label it softly in your mind. Planning, worrying, remembering, judging. By labeling, you create a small distance between the awareness and the thought. The more often you do this, the more the illusion begins to dissolve. The third step is compassion. As the illusion unravels, old patterns may still arise. You may still catch yourself believing a painful thought or clinging to an identity shaped by thinking. That is natural. The point is not to eliminate all identification overnight, but to meet it with kindness. The observer watches without judgment. You can do the same. Each recognition is progress. Each moment of awareness, a step toward freedom. As you continue this exploration, life itself becomes the teacher. In moments of stress, notice how thoughts multiply, offering stories of fear and danger. In moments of joy, notice how thoughts rush to claim credit, insisting that you are responsible for happiness. In both cases, the same illusion operates. By watching it, by seeing it clearly, you weaken its power. Slowly, you begin to live less as the thinker and more as the one who notices the play of thought. What emerges from this shift is a deeper sense of peace. You no longer need to control every idea or punish yourself for every dark image that crosses the mind. You understand that thoughts are simply weather patterns, not permanent truths. This frees you to engage with life more directly. You can listen to others without rehearsing your response in your head. You can face challenges without being crushed by catastrophic thinking. You can rest more easily, knowing that the noise of the mind is not who you are. The illusion of being the thinker is perhaps the most persistent dream humanity has ever believed. Yet it is also the dream that, unsequestioned, begins to dissolve. When the dream fades, what remains is not emptiness but clarity. You are not the author of every thought. You are the awareness in which thoughts arise and dissolve. And in that recognition, you discover a freedom that has no boundaries. So tonight, as you lie down and the mind begins its familiar performance, try this experiment. Instead of joining the play, take your seat in the audience. Watch the actors come and go. Notice the lines being recited, the dramas unfolding. But remember that you are not the stage, not the characters, not even the script. You are the one watching, silent, present, untouched. And in that simple awareness, the illusion of I am the thinker loses its hold. The gap between thoughts and the doorway to freedom. If the illusion of being the thinker is one of the most powerful habits of the mind, then the discovery of silence between thoughts is one of the most powerful medicines. It may sound simple, even too simple, but often the greatest truths reveal themselves in moments so subtle we overlook them. We live surrounded by the constant noise of inner dialogue, a stream of commentary that feels endless. And yet, hidden within this stream, like open spaces between trees in a forest, there are gaps. These gaps are not empty in the way we imagine emptiness. They are alive, spacious, and full of possibility. They are the doorway to freedom. When you first begin to look for the gap between thoughts, you may feel as though it does not exist. The chatter of the mind seems relentless, one thought tumbling into the next, like dominoes falling in a long chain. But if you slow down, if you listen closely, you will notice there are tiny pauses, brief silences, when no word is being spoken inside. They may last only a fraction of a second at first, but with awareness they begin to lengthen. In these pauses, something profound is revealed. You remain present, alive, aware, even when no thought is moving. Imagine standing on a shoreline watching waves roll in. The eye is drawn to the crests, the splashing foam, the movement, but between each wave there is a still moment when the water is calm. We rarely notice it because our attention is fixed on the waves. Thoughts are like those waves, rising and falling with drama. The gap between thoughts is like the still surface between swells. If you allow your awareness to rest there, you discover that peace has always been present, only hidden by the constant motion. This discovery changes everything. Most of us believe that silence is fragile, easily broken, and that thoughts are strong, dominating our lives. But the truth is reversed. Silence is the foundation, the ever-present background. While thoughts are temporary visitors, like clouds passing through a vast sky, thoughts may fill the space, but they never alter the space itself. The sky remains open, the silence remains untouched. The first time you glimpse this directly, it may feel like stumbling into a hidden sanctuary. You realize that you do not need to force the mind into silence. Silence is already here, woven into the fabric of your experience. Every thought is surrounded by it, like pearls on a string. The only reason it feels absent is because we focus only on the pearls and never on the string that holds them. Let us try a simple inquiry. Close your eyes and attempt to predict your next thought. Wait in anticipation. What happens? For a moment, there is nothing. The mind is still, suspended in the act of waiting. Then, suddenly, a thought appears, uninvited. But notice the pause that came before. That pause is the doorway. Each time you try to catch a thought before it arrives, you touch the edge of freedom. You see that you are present even when thinking ceases. You are not dependent on thought for your existence. You are the awareness in which both thought and silence appear. This recognition often brings a deep sense of relief. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack for years, convinced it was part of your body, only to realize you can set it down. The constant chatter of the mind, the belief that you must follow every thought, feels like such a burden. But in the gap, the burden lifts. There is no demand, no pressure, no identity to defend. Only presence, only being. At first, the mind may resist. It is accustomed to constant activity and feels uneasy when it pauses. Some people describe a wave of restlessness or even fear the first time they notice extended silence. The mind whispers, "Shouldn't I be thinking something? Shouldn't I be doing something?" This is natural, It is like a city dweller visiting the countryside for the first time, unsettled by the quiet night. But if you stay, if you allow the silence to hold you, the unease fades. What remains is a peace more natural than any thought could ever provide. In Zen tradition, there is a saying, between two thoughts, truth shines. This is not poetry but a practical pointer. The truth of who you are is not hidden in the content of thought but in the space that surrounds it. Look there, not at the words but at the silence that frames them. It is like gazing at the night sky and realizing the stars are striking only because of the vast darkness that holds them. Why is this gap so liberating? Because in the gap there is no identity, no story, no struggle. Thoughts carry with them narratives of who we are, what we must achieve, what we must avoid. They generate emotions, desire, fears, but in the gap, all of that falls away. There is no thinker, no doer, no self-image, only awareness, vast and free. To rest there is to taste the essence of freedom itself. Let us return to everyday life. Imagine a stressful meeting at work. Voices rise, opinions clash, and your mind fills with arguments, defenses, strategies. In the middle of this storm, you remember the gap. You take a breath, let your attention soften, and notice the silence beneath the noise. Even for a second, that recognition changes everything. You see the thoughts without being consumed by them. You hear the words without being trapped in them. In that space, you can respond with clarity rather than react with habit. Or imagine lying awake at night, caught in a loop of worry. The mind spins scenarios of what might go wrong tomorrow. Usually we chase these thoughts, trying to solve them, only feeding the cycle. But if you turn your attention to the silence between thoughts, you step off the treadmill. The worries lose their grip because you are no longer inside them. You are watching them arise and dissolve against the backdrop of stillness. The body relaxes, the mind softens, and sleep comes more naturally. The gap also nourishes creativity. Writers, musicians, and artists often speak of inspiration striking when the mind is quiet. A melody arrives in the shower. A solution appears during a walk. An idea blossoms while gazing out the window. Why does this happen? Because in the silence between thoughts, space opens for new patterns to emerge. The rigid loops of habitual thinking loosen, and fresh connections arise. Creativity is not forced, it flows from the openness of awareness itself. Spiritual traditions across the world have recognized this truth. In Christian mysticism, silence is called the language of God. In Taoism, the value of the empty space within the vessel is praised. In Hindu philosophy, the self is said to shine when the modifications of the mind are stilled. Zen Buddhism echoes the same message. In the gap between thoughts, the essence of reality reveals itself. The words may differ, but the experience is universal. The practice of recognizing the gap is simple, but simplicity does not mean easy. The habit of identification with thought is strong, and the mind will try to pull you back into its stories. The key is persistence, gentle persistence. Each time you notice a thought, instead of following it, turn your attention to the space before the next one arises. Rest there, even for a breath. Over time, the moments of silence grow longer, and the awareness of them becomes more stable. Some people fear that if they dwell too much in silence, they will lose the ability to function. They imagine becoming passive, detached from life, unable to make decisions. In truth, the opposite occurs. When you rest in the gap, you return to life with greater clarity. You are less clouded by compulsive thinking and more present to what is actually happening. Decisions arise naturally, not from anxiety, but from awareness. Actions flow more gracefully because they are not entangled in endless second-guessing. Think of an athlete in the zone, a musician lost in performance, a dancer moving effortlessly. In these states, the chatter of thought recedes, and action flows directly from awareness. The gap is not separate from life. It is the space through which life moves most freely. By recognizing and resting in it, you align with this natural flow. It is worth remembering that the gap is not something you create. It is already here, always present, waiting to be noticed. You do not need to add silence. You only need to stop overlooking it. Just as stars do not need to be painted into the sky but only revealed by night, silence does not need to be manufactured. It only needs to be seen. The doorway to freedom is not far away, hidden in some distant land. It is here, in the quiet pause between one thought and the next. Each time you rest there, you are reminded of who you truly are. Not the thinker, not the story, not the endless stream of commentary, but the awareness that holds it all. This awareness is spacious, open, and free, so the next time your mind feels like a crowded marketplace, noisy and overwhelming, remember this truth. Step aside for a moment, listen for the silence that is always present beneath the noise. Notice the gap, however small, between one sound and the next, one thought and the next. That gap is not absence but presence. It is not weakness but strength. It is the open door through which freedom enters. And as you continue on this path, the gap will no longer feel like a brief visitor. It will become a trusted companion, reminding you again and again that peace is not something to be found in the future. It is already here, in the space that has been with you all along. Step into that space, rest there, and discover the freedom that no thought can ever give or take away. Practical applications of living with the observer. By now, the emergence of the observer and the discovery of the gap between thoughts have revealed a truth both unsettling and liberating. You are not the thinker, but the awareness in which thoughts appear and dissolve. The question then becomes how this insight translates into daily life. It is one thing to taste freedom in moments of meditation or silence, but what happens in the middle of conflict, at work, in family life, or while navigating the stress of modern society? If awareness is truly our essential nature, it must be lived, not only glimpsed in rare moments. The practical applications of living with the observer are vast. They touch every aspect of human experience, from the way we handle stress, to how we relate to others, and even to how we create art, solve problems, and make decisions. Awareness is not an abstract idea. It is a living presence that can transform the texture of ordinary life. Let us explore how. Stress and anxiety. Consider the common experience of anxiety. Perhaps you are preparing for a presentation at work. The mind fills with thoughts. What if I forget my words? What if they judge me? What if I fail? Each thought carries an emotional charge, and the body responds with tension, racing heart, sweated palms. In the usual pattern, we identify with these thoughts, believing them to be truths about ourselves. The result is stress that feels overwhelming. Now imagine approaching the same situation with the observer present. The thoughts still arise, but instead of becoming them, you notice them. You see them as possibilities, not certainties. You say inwardly, there is a thought about forgetting my words. There is a thought about being judged. This simple shift creates distance. The fear no longer consumes you. It is observed. The body may still react, but the panic loses its grip. You can breathe. You can speak. You can act with clarity. The observer does not erase anxiety, but it changes your relationship to it. Instead of drowning in the storm, you stand on the shore watching the waves. That difference can turn crippling fear into manageable energy, into focus that supports rather than hinders you. Relationships and communication. Perhaps nowhere is the practice of awareness more transformative than in relationships. Consider a heated argument with a loved one. Words are spoken that sting. Émotions surgent. In the usual pattern, you identify with the thoughts racing through your head. They always treat me this way. I am right. They are wrong. I have to defend myself. When identified, you react, often with anger, blame, or withdrawal. The argument escalates, walls are built, and connection is lost. But with the observer present, something new becomes possible. You still feel the heat, but you notice the thoughts rather than fusing with them. You see, this is anger. This is blame. These are thoughts arising. That awareness opens space. Instead of lashing out, you may pause, you may listen. You may sense the pain beneath the other person's words. You may express your feelings with clarity rather than accusation. The same situation that once deepened conflict can now become an opportunity for understanding. Living with the observer does not make relationships free of difficulty, but it allows for honesty, compassion, and true dialogue. You are no longer locked inside the prison of your own story. You can meet the other person as they are, not as your thoughts demand them to be. Work and decision-making. In professional life, identification with thought often leads to stress and poor decisions. We rehearse scenarios endlessly, caught in loops of analysis, fearing mistakes. The illusion of being the thinker pushes us to control every outcome, yet decisions made in this state often lack clarity. They are clouded by fear. When the observer is present, work takes on a different texture. You approach problems with calm, seeing thoughts as tools rather than truths. You weigh options, but you do not collapse into anxiety. You notice when a thought is driven by fear or ego and allow it to pass. From the space of awareness, creative solutions often emerge spontaneously. Decision-making becomes less about force and more about alignment with what is clear and true in the moment. Think of leaders who inspire trust. They are not those who think the loudest, but those who act with presence, grounded in awareness. Their clarity is felt because it arises not from frantic thinking but from a deeper center. This clarity is available to anyone who lives with the observer. See, creativity and innovation. Artists, musicians, writers, and innovators often describe inspiration arriving unexpectedly, in moments of stillness. This is not a coincidence. Creativity flourishes in the space where the mind loosens its grip. The observer allows this space to open. When you step back from identification with thought, you create room for the new to arise. Consider a writer struggling with a blank page. The mind screams, "I cannot do this. I am not talented enough. This is hopeless." If the writer identifies with these thoughts, the page remains blank. But if the observer notices them without clinging, silence appears. From that silence, a sentence emerges, then another. The flow begins. The observer does not create art directly, but it allows the conditions in which art arises. In everyday life, creativity is not limited to artists. Each of us faces situations that require fresh ideas: how to comfort a child, how to solve a household problem, how to navigate change. The observer opens the door to inspiration in all these moments. Emotional healing. Old wounds often persist because we identify with the thoughts and stories surrounding them. A painful memory arises, and the mind says, "This defines me. I am broken. I will never heal." The identification locks the pain in place, repeating it again and again. With the observer present, healing begins. The memory may still arise, but you see it as a thought, an image, not the whole of who you are. You allow the feeling to surface without drowning in it. You witness the pain with compassion. Over time, the grip of the story loosens. You are not the wounded one. You are the awareness in which the wound is seen. From this perspective, true healing becomes possible, not by erasing the past, but by changing your relationship to it. Technology and modern life. Our age is defined by constant stimulation. Phones buzz, screens flash, information pour ein. This environment feeds identification with thought, keeping the mind restless and distracted. But living with the observer provides a counterbalance. You can notice the urge to check your phone, the compulsion to scroll endlessly, and in noticing, you can choose. You are not enslaved by the impulse. You can put the device down, breathe, and return to presence. This practice is radical in a culture designed to capture attention. Each moment of awareness is an act of reclaiming your life from the machinery of distraction. The observer gives you back the power to direct your attention rather than have it hijacked by every flashing notification. Compassion and connection. Perhaps the deepest application of living with the observer is the flowering of compassion. When you no longer identify exclusively with your thoughts, you see more clearly that others are also caught in theirs. You recognize the shared human struggle. Instead of reacting with judgment, you feel empathy. You understand that beneath anger, others may be afraid. Beneath harshness, they may be in pain. This recognition softens the heart. Compassion flows not as a forced effort, but as a natural response to seeing reality clearly. You no longer defend your identity so fiercely, and in that openness, connection grows. Love arises not as sentimentality, but as recognition of shared being, living the observer daily. Practical application is not about withdrawing from life, but engaging more fully. It is about meeting each moment with awareness rather than automatic reaction. You can practice this anywhere. When walking down the street, notice the sounds and sights, and also notice the silence beneath them. When speaking with a friend, feel the impulse to interrupt, then notice it and listen instead. When worry arises, observe it as energy passing through. These small acts accumulate, transforming the fabric of daily experience. The observer is not a mystical state reserved for monks or philosophers. It is the birthright of every human being. To live with the observer is to live awake, free from the tyranny of compulsive thought. It is to bring awareness into the marketplace, the home, the workplace, the heart. This practice does not eliminate challenge or pain, but it changes the way we meet them. Stress becomes manageable, relationships become more authentic, work becomes clearer, creativity flows, healing deepens, compassion grows. Life remains unpredictable, but within it, a steady presence abides. That presence is you, the observer, living not in theory but in practice. The concluding vision. All the reflections we have explored the emergence of the observer, the illusion of being the thinker, the silence between thoughts, and the practical applications of awareness lead us toward one final vision. It is not merely an idea to hold in the mind, nor a philosophy to debate. It is an invitation to live differently. The essence of Zen, and of all deep contemplative traditions, is not about collecting concepts, but about seeing directly what is already true. And when you see it, when you live it, everything changes. Imagine your life as a vast landscape. For years you have walked through it carrying a heavy pack filled with thoughts, judgments, fears, and beliefs about who you are. You have trudged along believing the weight was your identity, never questioning whether it could be set down. But the journey we have taken reveals that the pack is not you. You are the one carrying it. And once that realization dawns, you discover the freedom to place it on the ground, to stand tall, to breathe deeply of the open air. This vision is not a distant dream reserved for saints or sages. It is here, in this very moment, available to anyone willing to look. It begins with noticing. Each time you see a thought arise and recognize it as a thought rather than as yourself, you step into freedom. Each time you rest in the gap between thought, you remember who you are. Each time you act from the observer, rather than from identification, you live more fully. A different way of seeing. Living with this vision is like putting on new glasses after years of blurred sight. Suddenly the world looks clearer, brighter, more vivid. You realize that what seemed solid and oppressive, the endless chatter of thought, was only a fog. Beneath it lies the brilliance of awareness itself, steady and luminous. The trees, the sky, the faces of loved ones, even the sound of your own breath appear more alive. You are no longer lost in the story about life. You are present for life itself. This clarity is not about withdrawing from thought or rejecting it. Thoughts still arise, as naturally as waves or clouds, but now they are seen for what they are. Appearances within awareness. They may be useful, they may be creative, they may be troubling, but they are no longer mistaken for the essence of who you are. You can use them without being used by them. You can welcome them without being enslaved. Freedom in everyday life. What does this freedom look like in practice? It looks like a parent responding with patience rather than anger when a child misbehaves. It looks like a worker facing criticism without collapsing into shame. It looks like a student meeting the stress of exams with calm focus rather than panic. It looks like an artist allowing inspiration to flow without being blocked by self-doubt. Freedom is not the absence of challenge, but the presence of awareness in the midst of it. The storms of life continue to come and go, but you are no longer tossed helplessly by them. You are the sky, vast and untouched, within which the storms appear. That recognition is not abstract comfort. It is practical power. It allows you to meet life with clarity, courage, and compassion. Compassion as the natural outcome. One of the most beautiful aspects of this vision is that it naturally blossoms into compassion. When you realize that your own identification with thought has caused suffering, you see more clearly that others are caught in the same web. Their anger, their fear, their harsh words are not who they are, but the product of identification. This understanding softens your heart. Instead of responding with judgment, you respond with empathy. Compassion is not a moral obligation, but a natural expression of awareness. When you are no longer trapped in defending a false self, you are free to connect with others as they truly are. Love arises not as a sentiment, but as recognition of shared being. This compassion extends beyond people to the whole of life. You see the same awareness shining in animals, in forests, in rivers, in the earth itself. The illusion of separation fades, and with it, the arrogance of domination. Care for others, care for the planet, flows naturally when you live from awareness. The paradox of effortless practice. Another aspect of this vision is the paradox of effort and effortlessness. At first, cultivating the observer may feel like work. You remind yourself to notice, to pause, to rest in the gap. But over time, it becomes less about effort and more about recognition. Awareness is already here. You do not create it. You only stop overlooking it. Think of learning to ride a bicycle. At first, it requires concentration, balance, and correction. But once the skill is embodied, you no longer think about it. You simply ride. In the same way, living with awareness may begin as a practice, but eventually it becomes natural. You no longer need to remind yourself constantly. Awareness shines by itself, effortless and steady, facing suffering and death. Perhaps the deepest test of this vision is how it meets suffering and death. Life will inevitably bring loss, illness, aging, and eventually death. When identified with thought, these experiences feel like final defeats. The self we believe ourselves to be is threatened, and fear dominates. But from the perspective of awareness, suffering is met differently. Pain still arises, grief still pierces, but beneath it all there remains an unshaken ground. Awareness itself is untouched. When facing death, this recognition becomes profound. Thoughts of fear may arise, but they are seen as thoughts, not as ultimate truth. Awareness remains, watching even the end of the body. Whether one interprets this spiritually as consciousness continuing or simply as peace in the present moment, the result is the same. Death loses its terror. Life is lived more fully because you no longer cling so desperately to protect the illusion of self. A call to presence. The final vision is not about achieving something in the future. It is about waking up now. The mind always postpones freedom. It says, I will be at peace when I solve this problem, when I succeed, when I change myself. But awareness does not belong to the future. It is here, in this breath, in this moment. The gap between thoughts is not tomorrow, it is now. The observer is not hidden. It is you, reading these words, listening, aware. The call, then, is simple. Rest in awareness now. Notice your thoughts, but do not become them. Notice the silence, the space, the presence that holds everything. Trust it. Live from it. Each time you do, you step into the freedom that has always been yours. Integration into modern life. Some may wonder if such a vision is possible in the complexity of modern life, with responsibilities, deadlines, and constant distractions. Is awareness realistic? The answer is yes, precisely because awareness is not an escape from life. but a way of being in life more fully. You can live from the observer while sending email, while caring for children, while walking in the city. Awareness is not opposed to activity, it is the ground of it. In fact, modern life makes awareness more necessary than ever. The constant bombardment of information can easily drown us in thought. Without awareness, we become exhausted, anxious, and fragmented. With awareness, we can navigate the noise with clarity, choosing what matters, letting go of what does not. The observer becomes a compass, guiding us through the chaos with steady presence. The simplicity of being. At the heart of the final vision lies simplicity. For all the complexity of thought, the truth of awareness is simple. It requires no philosophy, no elaborate rituals. It is as close as your next breath, as immediate as the sound of a bird outside your window. To live with awareness is to return to this simplicity, to rediscover the ease of simply being. This simplicity does not diminish life, it enriches it. Food tastes better when you are present. Conversations are deeper when you are listening rather than rehearsing your response. Work is more meaningful when you are not lost in anxiety about outcomes. Joy is more vibrant when it is not clouded by thoughts about whether it will last. Even sorrow is more human, more tender, when experienced without resistance. Awareness makes every moment more alive. A closing image. Picture once more the sky. Clouds drift through, some light and playful, others dark and stormy. Storms may rage, lightning may flash, but the sky remains vast, untouched, embracing it all. This is who you are. You are not the storm. You are not even the clouds. You are the sky itself, open, limitless, free. When you live from this truth, fear loosens, love deepens, and life becomes a dance rather than a battle. You discover that freedom is not something to be earned, but something to be recognized. It has always been here, waiting in the silence between thoughts, shining in the presence of the observer, guiding you in every breath. This is the concluding vision, a life lived not as the thinker, but as awareness itself, free, compassionate, and fully present. Conclusion. Returning to the observer. Throughout this journey, we have explored the emergence of the observer, the illusion of being the thinker, the gap between thoughts, and the practical ways awareness transforms our daily lives. Each of these insights points to one central truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear and dissolve. This recognition is not meant to be admired from a distance, but to be lived here and now. The observer is not something foreign to you. It is not a mystical gift reserved for the few. It is already present, silently accompanying every moment of your life. You have glimpsed it whenever you notice the chatter of your mind instead of being swept away by it. You have touched it in moments of awe, when a sunset or a piece of music left you speechless, if only for a breath. You have felt it in the pauses between worries, in the stillness of watching your own child sleep, in the quiet after laughter. It has always been here, waiting to be recognized. When you identify with thoughts, life feels like a constant struggle. Each worry seems urgent. Each judgment feels final. Each story appears unshakable. You run after approval, defend opinions, replay regrets. But when you rest in awareness, everything shifts. Thoughts still arise, but they lose their grip. Emotions still surge, but they no longer define you. Challenges still come, but you face them from a place of presence rather than panic. The difference is profound. Think of the countless hours you may have spent caught in worry, rehearsing what could go wrong, only to find that most of it never happened. Think of the times anger carried you away, only to leave you with regret. Think of the judgments that told you you were not enough, even when others saw your worth. All of this arises from the illusion of being the thinker, and yet, each time you step back into the observer, the illusion dissolves. You see thoughts for what they are, temporary, conditioned, fleeting. They lose their power when you no longer mistake them for yourself. The gap between thoughts reveals this truth with clarity. Even when no thought is present, you remain. You do not vanish when the mind grows quiet. In fact, in those moments you feel more alive, more whole, more yourself than in any thought-driven identity. That silence is the doorway to freedom. By resting in it, you rediscover the simplicity of being. You discover that awareness does not need to be created or earned. It is here, as natural as breathing. Living with awareness changes how you move through the world. Stress becomes lighter because you are no longer trapped inside every anxious thought. Relationships become deeper because you can listen without rehearsing your defense. Work becomes clearer because decisions are made from presence. Nautpanich. Creativity flows because the silence between thoughts makes space for inspiration. Compassion arises naturally because you see others not as enemies but as fellow travelers caught in their own storms of thought. This vision is not abstract. It is as practical as the next moment of your life. The next time you feel overwhelmed, pause and notice. A thought is saying this is too much. The next time anger rises, pause and notice. A thought is demanding revenge. The next time joy appears, pause and notice. A thought is claiming it will not last. In every case, the awareness that notices is more real than the thought itself. That awareness is you. The call to action is simple yet radical. Begin living as the observer. Not tomorrow, not after you fix your problems, not when you feel more spiritual, but now. You can do it in the middle of your workday, while standing in line, while speaking to a friend. Each moment offers the chance to return to awareness. You do not need to force thoughts to stop. That would be like trying to hold back the tide. Instead, you rest in the space that holds both thought and silence. You learn to trust awareness more than the stories of the mind. With practice, this trust deepens until it becomes natural. You no longer seek freedom in the future. You recognize it as the ground of every present moment. The world we live in urgently needs people who embody this awareness. Anxiety, division, distraction, and fear dominate much of modern life. When you live from the observer, you become a source of steadiness in a restless world. Your presence itself becomes healing. Others feel safer, calmer, more open in your company because you are not lost in defending an identity. You live with clarity, with compassion, with courage. This is not about perfection. Even with awareness, you will forget. You will fall into identification. You will get lost in stories. But each time you remember, you return. Each time you notice, you strengthen the presence of the observer. Over time, the forgetting becomes shorter, the remembering becomes easier, and the awareness becomes your home. So the invitation is this: live from awareness. Notice your thoughts, but do not be ruled by them. Rest in the gap and let silence nourish you. Bring presence into your work, your relationships, your creativity, your challenges. Let compassion flow from the recognition that others are caught in the same illusions you have seen through. The journey is not about becoming someone new. It is about recognizing who you have always been, not the restless voice in the head, not the shifting stories of identity, but the vast awareness that holds it all. That awareness is steady, timeless, and free. It is the sky in which every storm appears and dissolves. It is the ground beneath every step. It is the truth of who you are. Take this vision with you into your daily life. The next time you hear the chatter of your mind, smile gently. Remember the trains rushing through the station, the cars on the highway, the clouds in the sky. Remember that you are not the noise but the presence that notices it. Step back into that awareness and let it guide you. The freedom you seek is not waiting at the end of some distant path. It is here, in this breath, in this very moment. Live it now.